Welcome back, everyone. Well, you can tell from the way I'm laughing that it's Steve Carlton, First Vice President, Jenny Montgomery Scott,
Good
Financial
afternoon.
Advisors. Hello, Steve.
Thank you, Jesse. Good to be here.
Nice to have you here. I want to jump into the topics we're going to discuss today, but first, you were tied up yesterday and couldn't come over, but I wanted to thank you for being the sponsor for the Franklin Community Center for our 12 Days of Giving. It was great. I interviewed Jamie yesterday. And
I was going to ask you about that.
You were?
Did she know that you were on the first part of the thing where you were asking about the music?
Oh, no, I ambushed her.
I thought you did. Jamie's a wonderful person. I've worked with Franklin for over the years, and just great organization, great people, and what a difference. So happy to be a part of that. And thank you for covering these groups, because, you know, if their name doesn't get out there and they're not out in front of people, people forget about them. So it's a great organization. So it was a good interview. I liked it.
Well, it's always great to have you as part of our family here and recommending something like that. And you're also very generous of your time with Franklin Community Center. You really give back. So at any rate, you're all fit. And we did ambush her at the beginning of the interview. That was fun. Steph, we can't start today without talking about oil. What the heck is going on?
5.5-year low today, below $60 a barrel. There's good news and there's bad news with this. And, you know, we've talked a lot about how high prices breed low prices and low prices
breed
high prices. And so we've got this bull market on oil for a very, very long time, and it's encouraged a lot of drilling, a lot of technology improvements, and we've gone all over the world to find new sources of oil. The challenge is that as all this new oil's come online, the supply glut. And so now you have this oil drop, the price drop, and it's now at a level where it starts to become really problematic for a lot of different countries. Countries like Russia, countries like Venezuela, but also even
Germany,
Germany's economy is affected, certainly with Russia. You've got also our neighbor to the north, Canada, their costs of the oil sands, and then you've got the Dakotas and you've got Texas.
Domestic production.
So there's a lot of trade-offs going on right now.
You know, one thing, and again, we're not, at least I'm not skilled to have this part of the discussion, but people are saying that the prices are being driven down artificially to get back at Russia for what they have done with Crimea and what they're doing with Ukraine.
Well, you know, if you're a little bit of a history buff and you think back to Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan, and, you know, part of the strategy that they worked out with Saudi Arabia, pushing oil prices down, and eventually brought the fall of communism with Russia. You can't help but notice the parallels there with Saudi Arabia keeping the supply up and putting a lot of pressure, but it's not just Russia. There's a lot of consequences felt, like we just said. So there's a lot at work. It's definitely, like you said, very complicated.
Well, and I know, you know, in your position, you have to follow this stuff. I don't know how you do it. But you know what? Let's talk about that here. We live in the Northeast. Huge dependency on oil and oil-related products for transportation. Commutes are always greater up here where we live. Heating issues in the winter, of course. And the lower prices, at least on the surface, would mean more disposable income.
Yeah, when we talk about our viewers, we talk about the people in our communities, this is good news. Maybe not for the Texas oil billionaire, maybe not for this, you know, the sheik in Saudi Arabia, but for our viewers, people in our community, Warren County, Washington, Saratoga, you know, Glens Falls, this is good news. Like you said, lower costs, more money in their pocket. This helps people with, you know, people's incomes have not kept pace with inflation. So this is good news for our watchers, our viewers. And I think that will make a difference for the local economy.
Well, if that follows, then how does that affect the GDP?
Well, a great example. We talked a little bit last week about buying locally. And, you know, I was walking by Crafters Gallery the other day, and I was seeing people coming in and out. When you don't spend $100 filling your tank in gas and you put $60 in, you know, you got a couple extra bucks in your pocket, you're going to be a little bit more generous, you're going to be a little bit more in the Christmas spirit perhaps. And so, you know, I see GDP being affected, the small businesses, the medium-sized businesses, having consumers having a little bit more breathing room to partake in spending money this time of year.
You know, when you talk about a little more breathing room, I read a statistic this week, and I know we all feel this. They were saying something, it was a higher number than I thought. It was like a 40% people live paycheck to paycheck. That's a big number in my mind.
Just the idea that, you know, like you're saying, I think what you're referring to is the average American right now, about 40% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. The thought that people they're that tight financially, that's why this is such a good thing. I think for the average American, this is a good thing. The trade-off is, and what makes me concerned, is that over the next 2, 3, 4 years, do we cut back on exploration? Do we cut back on drilling? And therefore, the consequence of that is that we start seeing gas prices shoot back up to $100 a barrel.
Right.
So my hope is that we find this equilibrium, and some say, you know, that $70, $75 a barrel
Yes, I've heard that too.
keeps the supply and demand in check, and that makes it profitable enough for the oil companies, but yet sustainable enough for the average American that everybody can get by. And so I'm hoping that that's the range we can stay in.
So do you have to get up at like 3 in the morning and start checking markets overseas? I mean, how do you keep pace with this?
You know, it helps when you don't sleep, and
Yeah.
it definitely does. But
I guess it does.
It's a fun thing to do. It's like we've talked
Yeah.
about, you know, all the different things. This is people's livelihoods. This is what makes the world go round, and you got to love doing this. If you don't love doing it, you know, it's like nails on a chalkboard.
Well, and as a financial advisor, Steve, of course, is particularly skilled. You are. You're
Thank
really
you.
good. Hey, let's jump local. We have some big initiatives here that we've been covering in our news. The casinos. The date is coming up.
December 17th.
That's
That's
right. That's
yeah.
absolutely right. East Greenbush?
I think so. You know,
think so?
you know, there's a lot of locations. 4 are going to be announced. I think the odds are definitely tilted towards them, and that's going to make a huge, huge difference. I mean, we've talked, you know, over the last year
Well,
about
it's right
pros
close
and
to
cons.
Saratoga County. It's in Warren, Washington, right?
Yeah, it's a mixed bag, right? We've talked
Yeah.
about the good and the bad from having these kinds of you know places, but this isn't some mom and pop casino. This is Las Vegas style. This is a world class casino with the entertainment venues, the golfing, and everything else. And so it will be a destination. How that will affect and influence our local economy remains to be seen. But I think we're tilting more and more that direction.
I think so too. Something that really hits close to home is something we've been covering in the news. Lake George, Queensbury, Glens Falls grouping together to make a bid to get special Winter
Winter Olympics, yeah.
up in our area up there. That's a major coup for the local economy.
It is. I mean, you know how exciting this is because we've talked about the hotel coming up into Lake George and these improvements that they've done and how this will make a difference. It's all of a sudden it starts to snowball, pun intended, and this
so
is
clever.
happening this time of year, and this is exciting for me because I see all the meetings, all the feedback from people in the community about what makes this area great, how to market it, and these are the types of events where I look on and say, what a great venue. You know, my fingers are crossed. I hope they can get this.
Yeah, I hope they get it too, because they're talking about doing the different meets and games at different facilities all throughout Queensbury and Glens
Absolutely.
Falls and Lake George. I just love the whole idea of it.
Yeah.
I hope they're successful with it too. One last thing before we go. The last month, we're in December.
Yep.
What are people saying when they call? What are you saying? Here's what you really should do before the end of the year. I know it's a loaded question,
Yeah.
but I just was hoping that, you know, maybe there was some common thing here.
You know the common thing right now, and
What?
I'm a procrastinator, so I can say this. It's all the procrastinators. Everybody that hasn't.
Are you looking at me when you
a
say
little bit? Yeah, he's got a call. So. People that know the markets at all-time highs, know they've got some real winners, maybe some losers in the course of the year, trades that haven't happened yet.
Right.
And there's a time to take those taxable gains and losses before the end of the year. And so if you haven't talked to your financial advisor, if you haven't talked to your broker and said, how did we do for the year? What should we realize gains and losses if it's a taxable account? I think it's just a good idea in general this time of year because we've gone so far. The market almost...
Right.
You're silly not to take advantage of it. So I really encourage people, get on the phone, talk to your person,
Yes, right.
get the recommendations, get set up, and really kind of reorganize things. This is the time of year to do it.
Okay, so then you can expect a call from me in the morning. Would that be
December
okay?
30th, yes.
Yeah, that's right. Good. Well, Steve, thanks very much
Thanks
for
you,
coming
Jesse.
in. We'll see you next week.
A pleasure.
Okay. See this interview again, head to our website.